Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 381 of CryptoBiography, and it's part 4 of Repercussions. And this is our neo-noir. And while I haven't been doing content warnings, and typically I don't consider like regular violence and stuff like that to be typical. Typically, I just don't feel the need to do content warning for stuff like that. But this one does include references to kidnapping. It actually has kidnapping in it, and then references to sexual abuse and trafficking. So I thought I would mention that up front in case that is a problem. And here we go. But going after a security company, particularly one that might have hidden agendas and therefore possibly hidden resources and allies, wouldn't be like a one-day job or like putting a bug on a single van. This would take time, and this would take her own resources. And a lot of both were already being used trying to run down the 7 people on her list. She decided that, important though this was, the company, called RTT Security, would have to be on the back burner. She would keep an eye out for any information that led back to the security company when she was doing her other research, for now. That was except for one thing. Her mole program was still giving her information. It had not yet been discovered. Though Catherine Martin was not directly employed by RTT Security, she wondered if there could be some connection somewhere in the data. She set her computer searching for such a connection, then considered next steps. She knew that she'd have to bump up her own resources. This enemy, this conspiracy, whatever it turned out to be, it was getting bigger all the time. So far, she had 7 people who were meeting about her killing, but now there had been a security company sent after her. Just a tool or part of the conspiracy. There's no way to know for sure. It might be worth finding out the connection between RTT Security and her conspirators, or were both groups just underlings for yet someone else? Perhaps there would be a way to find out, but not yet. The search on the data did not pull up anything on RTT Security. So she took another local job. Like all her work, it was wildly overpaid compared to what a street killer would charge. She had a scrupulously clean record, and she planned on keeping it that way. She did this by not leaving evidence, by being careful on even the seemingly simplest jobs, and by not getting greedy or stupid. When she used a weapon, that weapon was gotten rid of permanently, immediately after the job. And the people who employed her did not know her real identity. She went through go-betweens who also did not know who she really was. All this care was expensive, and thus her high fees. But she knew that all it would be was one mistake, one strange coincidence, or one enemy managing to outplay her that could take it all down. She preferred jobs that were outside the United States. It was always difficult for other countries to extradite U.S. citizens if it came to that, and generally, getting out of the country made it difficult for any investigator to figure out what was going on. But international jobs took longer. She invariably had to brush up on her languages, do some research on the target, and much more. That plus learning the area just took time. Local jobs were quicker. She used to turn down 10 times the work that she took locally. She was very picky about what she would do locally. But over time, her contacts had learned her predilections and only sent her jobs she was likely to take. So now she took nearly half the work that came her way, though the jobs were thinner. She forced herself not to cut corners. She needed money, but not so desperately that she should take chances. So it took her even longer to find a job. The one she chose would work just fine. There was a business owner who had a string of car dealerships. He also trafficked young women. This was the sort of job she might do for free. But in this case, someone really wanted this guy taken out and was willing to pay for it. The only snag was he had to know before he died why he was being killed. This tripled the cost, but apparently whoever the contractor was really wanted the guy to know why. This, of course, added immensely to the danger. No sniper shots or dabbing on poison in public. This would require a bit of cleverness. And she couldn't let this get traced back to her. This man was wealthy enough for the kill to raise a lot of eyebrows. She realized the best course of action was to expose him posthumously. She would have to leave enough evidence around, and perhaps even free enough slaves, to make sure that the investigators would be looking into that at least as much as the murder. It would also serve two other purposes. First, it would make it so the investigators and the public wouldn't be too interested in bringing his killer to justice. And second, it would leave a slew of suspects behind. A month later, she was in his basement. There were 4 girls there, shackled to beds in little cubicles. The guards were sedated and tied, and she was going to free all 4 girls. She had a mask and gloves on and figured the girls would freak out when they saw her. But the very first girl, when she opened the drape and entered the tiny space, froze, but then relaxed. Despite her heavy tactical gear and only her eyes being visible, the girl could tell this was a woman, and no woman had hurt them yet, clearly. She had considered killing the guards as well. They were also culpable, but she decided they could be sent to prison for a good long time instead. Plus, a multiple murder would bring a whole different level of heat. She had a burner phone. After freeing all 4 girls and making sure they were relatively okay, she gave them the burner phone, asked them to wait till they are off the property and down the street before turning it on and calling 911. She also gave them some cash, carefully vetted to make sure it had no fingerprints on it, for them to get cabs, just in case there was any reason why the police would not help them. She shuffled them out the front door, which had its security broken already, and she guided them off the property. She had spoken in loud whispers the entire time. She doubted they could give any sort of description to the police. Then she turned and went back in. Dale Fernmeyer was sleeping 3 floors above where girls had been imprisoned. She slunk down the hall, but no extra guards had been posted. She reached out from the side and tested the bedroom doorknob. With a bang, the door exploded outward. Fortunately, the pellets missed her hand, which was still on the knob. She could tell that her glove had prevented a fair bit of surface damage to her knuckles. "You're dead, scum, and I'm calling the cops." The latter part was a bluff. If he called the cops, he risked them finding out about the girls in his basement. No, he would try to kill her himself, but she also knew that he probably had called some sort of backup. Someone was coming. She called out, "This is for the girls." She always made sure any stipulations on her jobs were carried out. Now Dale knew without a doubt why he was being killed. She reached into a small bag on her hip. She took out 2 small objects. The first was a grenade. She pulled the pin on it and tossed it through the door. It rattled across the floor, then with a whoomp gave off smoke, though out of sight. "The fuck?" Dale yelled from inside his room. The smoke was visual only. It was not tear gas or anything else along those lines. She took the other object and stretched it out. It was an infrared camera. She made the lens poke into the hole in the door. Some smoke grenades used brass flakes to prevent infrared from working. But the smoke grenade she brought had no such deterrent. It could see perfectly well. The man was crouched in a corner, partly behind a wing chair. He was waving one hand, desperate to improve visibility, and holding the shotgun with the other. She took out another grenade. She pulled the pin and let the spoon flip, waited a moment, then tossed it through the hole in the direction of the criminal. She backed off and protected her ears, but it was still very loud when it went off. She'd not heard a yell of fear or surprise or any noise that would indicate he had batted it away or sprang away from the grenade. She suspected it had gone off directly next to him, but she had to be sure. She put the camera around the corner. She was on a timer now. A neighbor or someone else might report the explosion, or Dale might have called people and they could be sprinting in now that they knew that something was up. Dale was lying on the floor. He was probably dead. But she wasn't paid for probably. She put away the camera, opened the door, and pulled out her pistol. She put 2 in the back of his head. He never moved. She was gone before anyone else, police, criminal, or otherwise, arrived, but she left 2 calls. One was to the police to make sure they knew that Dale had been attacked and that he had kidnapped and abused women. And she had also alerted the press. They would be there asking questions, pressing the police about the kidnapped women. from a distance, she'd seen that the women had been safely taken care of by police, and the press had seen them as well. It was a good night. And that's the end of this episode. Obviously, the story is going to continue on. I'm having a lot of fun writing it. I hope you're enjoying listening to it. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2024, Brandon Starr, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.